Unit 6 Structure and Function. Contents 6.5 6.1 Introduction, 6.2 From Positivism to Functionalism, 6.3 Premises of Functionalism, 6.4 Functionalism in Social Anthropology, Radcliffe-Brown and Malinowski. Functionalism 6.5 Functionalism of Talcott, Parsons and Robert K.Merton. 6.6 Conclusion and 6.7 Further reading. Learning objective. After going through this unit, you will be able to explain the premises of functionalism, discuss the relevance of the concept of function in understanding society, compare and contrast the theoretical approach of Radcliffe-Brown, Malinowski and Parsons. 6.1 Introduction. Functionalism is the name of an approach in social anthropology and sociology, according to which a society is a whole of interconnected parts, where each part contributes to the maintenance of the whole. The task of sociology is to find out the contribution of each part of society and how society works together as an order arrangement of parts. Literally, the word function, from Latin fungi functia, to effect, perform or execute, means to perform or serve a purpose. In the field of architecture, it implies that a form should be adapted to usage and material. In areas such as politics and management, it means getting things to work. The word is used in mathematics in the sense of A is a function of B. It is used in everyday conversation where it may mean job or purpose. For instance, what is your functions in the office? In fact, what I am asking in the later question is, what do you do in your office? And for the act of doing, I am using the word function. This word is also used for celebrations and festival occasions such as inaugural function, marriage function, etc. In other words, function is a multi-meaning and multi-usage term. Levy Jr. 1968 writes, perhaps the major difficulty associated with the general concept of function has been the use of a single term to cover several distinctive different reference. As a distinct approach, as a way of looking at and analyzing society, functionalism emerged first in social anthropology in early 20th century and later in sociology beginning in 1930s. However, its roots are as ancient as the concept of organic analogy, used in philosophy or antiquity by Plato and Aristotle in BC 384 to 322. The concept of purpose or end goes back to Aristotle reference to the telos, purpose of this as their final cause. The idea of a latent telos is also found in Adam Smith's metaphor of the invisible hand as the automatic mechanism that maximizes wealth, individual welfare and economic efficiency through the increase in labor. It is from telos that the word teleology has come, which means that everything is determined by a purpose, and the scholars should find out what the purpose is. Some writers regard Claude Henry de Saint-Simon, the late 18th and early 19th century scholar writing after the French Revolution, as the father of sociology, because in his writing one finds a coexistence of two ideas, one from which a scientific study of society emerged and the other which contributed substantially to the growth of Marxian theory. 1973. The first idea is that the scientific method should be used for the study of society, and the second is that each society contains in the germs of its contradiction, because of which it changes over time. Saint-Simon also recognized revolution as an important process of change. It is the first thought of studying a society scientifically that Auguste Comte 1789 to 1857, the collaborator of Saint-Simon and the person who has coined the term sociology, fully develops under the rubric of what he calls positivism or positive philosophy. In this view, the methods for the study of society come from natural and biological sciences. The aim of the study is to discover the laws of evolution as well as the laws of functioning of the society. That is, how has the society evolved with the passage of time, and what are the various stages through which it has passed, and how does the society function or work at a particular point in time. The knowledge thus generated Comte thinks will help us to bring about a desirable change in society in carrying out the task of social reconstruction and amelioration. Comte's aim is to make the society a science of society, quite like the natural and biological science, and assign it a place in the hierarchy of sciences. For Comte, being the most general and most specific subject, sociology occupies the summit of hierarchy of sciences. It is the queen of sciences. In this unit, we expose the concept of function in sociological writings. We begin with the basic premises of functionalism, and then look into the theoretical contribution of Radcliffe-Brown, Malinowski, and Parsons. 6.2 From Positivism to Functionalism. The thesis of functionalism lies in the philosophy of positivism. Comte also makes us of the analogy of society as an organism, organic outside the viewing of a society as a system of interrelated parts, a view basic to the functional approach. The immediate forerunner for functionalism in sociology is Emile Durkheim in 1858 to 1917, who is a sharp critic of Comte as well as influenced by his ideas, for which he is earned, in the words of Alvin Goldner, 1973, the distinction of being uneasy Comtean. Like Comte, Durkheim is keenly interested in defining a subject, designing the subject matter of sociology as distinct from that of philosophy and biology. For him, sociology is a comparative and an objective study of social facts, which are the ways of thinking, acting, and feeling that have the noteworthy property of existing outside the individual consciousness. Social facts do not originate in the individual but in the collectivity, in the collective mind, because they exist outside the individual and they can be situated in the same way as one studies the material object. Social facts are comedy chose, that is, they are things perceived objectively and outside the individual. This, however, does not mean that they are as tangible as are the material things. Instead of their study, one uses the same frame of mind which one uses for the study of natural and biological objects that constitute the subject matter of natural and biological sciences. Like Comte, Durkheim also believes that the methods of natural and biological sciences can be used for the study of social facts, but though these methods are not to be used as they are, rather their suitable application to the science of social facts should be thoughtfully and critically investigated. Durkheim's book, titled The Rules of the Sociological Mind in 1895, was basically concerned with these issues. Books number 6.1 Sociological Explanation. From the study of social facts, sociologists offer what Durkheim calls sociological explanations. His sociological explanation consists of two parts. To quote Durkheim in 1895 to 123 here, to explain the social phenomena, the efficient cause which produces it and the function it fulfills must be investigated separately. The first component of the sociological explanation is the causal historical explanation, to delineate the causes which produce a phenomenon by examining historical sources rather than indulging in what Radcliffe-Brown calls conjectural history. The second component is functional, that is the contribution that a part make to society in the establishment of general harmony. In Durkheim's definition. Durkheim's definition of function has tremendously influenced the writing of lateral functionalists, both in sociological anthropology and sociology. For him, function is the contribution a part makes to the whole for its maintenance and well-being. Thus, function is a positive contribution. It is inherently good for society as a whole, for it ensures its continuity and healthy maintenance. By making it contribution, each part fulfill one of the needs or needs beyond of society. Once needs has been fulfilled, society will be able to survive and ensure. Durkheim applies this framework of social function in all his studies. For instance, in his doctoral work, which was on the division of labor, Durkheim 1893 rejected Darwin's idea that once the size of a human population increases, there will be a struggle for existence, and those who happen to be fit will survive while the rest will be eliminated. Instead of lending support to the theory of competition, conflict and elimination, Durkheim shows that as human population increases, society becomes more and more differentiated, with the division of labor moving towards the specialization of jobs rather than competing with others for survival. Human beings are able to depend on one another, for each specializes in a particular work. Specializations makes each one of the being important for the society. Durkheim also rejects the explanation of the division of labor that economists and psychologists had advanced, such as the division of labor increases economic efficiency and productivity, or it induces happiness, or its opposite. It makes people bored with these jobs. He is critical of the utilitarian and individualistic psychological explanation because, according to him, none of them actually explains the real function of the division of labor, the contribution it makes to the society. For him, the function of the division of labor is sociological. It contributes to the social solidarity. Modern industrial society is integrated because of the interdependence that comes into existence with the specialization of jobs. In his study of Australian totemism, he shows that the function of religion is to produce solidarity in society, to bind people in a moral community called church. Durkheim in 1915. Durkheim is particularly interested in showing that the function of social fact is moral. Social institutions work to produce the goal of integration. With this perspective, he is also able to account for the phenomena that to many may appear unhealthy for society. For example, he regards crime a normal and healthy feature of all societies because it reinforces collective sentiments and works towards the evolution of morality and law. He argues that the existence of criminal behavior constitutes an index of the flexibility of society. A normal rate of crime indicates that the society lacks the total authority to suppress all divergence of the individual. Crime shows the existence of social conditions that enable individuals to express them as individuals. However, if crime exceeds the normal limits, then it becomes unhealthy, pathological, jeopardizing the normal functioning of society. As it clear, Durkheim distinguishes between the normal and the pathological form of social facts. What is general in a society is normal, and what is not is pathological. The former performs the function of integrating society, whereas the latter thwarts the process of integration. Therefore, it needs to be brought under the control with the help of concreted collective action. Durkheim is also in favor of undertaking the attempts towards social amelioration, but they should follow a rigorous sociological study of the phenomenon. 6.3. The premises of functionalism. Durkheim is not a functionalist in the sense in which this term has come to be used for the approach that the British sociological anthropologist A.R. Radcliffe-Brown 1881 to 1955 and Bronislaw Malinowski 1884 to 1942 have espoused. Durkheim does not use the term functionalism, although he defines the concept of social function as we noted previously, and the second part of his sociological explanation deals with the functional explanation. One comes across in Durkheim's work a fine coexistence of diachronic, genetic, evolutionary and historical, and the synchronic, society here and now, approaches to the study of society, but it is quite clear that the study of the contemporary society occupies a preferred place in his writings. For instance, in his celebrated study of religion, he begins with the consideration of Australian totemism as the most elementary form of religious life, but he does not start speculating it as the earliest form and then, as his predecessors had done, offering theories to explain it. He is rather more concerned with the structure and function of totemism and how its study can help in understanding the place of religion in complex societies. This emphasis on the study of synchronous or present societies exerted a tremendous impact on later scholars. The beginning of the 20th century saw the continuation of the old evolutionary approach and also its gradual decline. It also witnessed the rise of functionalism. Adam Cooper, 1973, thinks that 1922 was the year of wonder of functionalism. For in this year were published two monographies that substantiated the functional approach. One was by Radcliffe-Brown titled The Andaman Islanders and the other by Malinowski titled Argonauts of the Western Pacific. The impact of the anthropological functionalism was felt in other disciplines, particularly sociology, although there were scholars such as Kingsley Davis, 1959, who saw nothing new in functional approach because they thought that sociologists had always been doing what functionalists wanted them to do. There were others such as Talcott, Parsons, who were clearly impressed with the writings of functional anthropologists. As a result of the writing of these people, functionalism emerged as an extremely important approach, holding its sway till the late 1960s and the early 1970s. In its history of about 150 years, first in the Positivism of Comte, then in the Sociological Positivism of Durkheim, and then in the works of the 20th century functionalists, functionalism has come to comprise a number of variants and foci. Pointed differences exist between the different functionalists. In fact, some of them happen to be arch rivals like Radcliffe-Brown and Malinowski. Notwithstanding their differences, it seems that all functionalists share the following 5 propositions. 1. Society or culture is a system like any other system, such as solar system, mechanical system, atomic system, chemical system, or organic system. 2. As a system, society or culture consists of parts like institutions, groups, roles, associations, organisms, which are interconnected, interrelated, and interdependent. Each part performs its own function. It makes its own contribution to the whole society or culture, and also it functions in relationship with other parts. 4th, a change in one part brings about a change in the other parts, or at least influences the functioning of other parts, because all parts are closely connected. Number 5, the entire society or culture, for which we can show the term all, is greater than the mere substitution of parts. It cannot be reduced to any part, or no part can explain the whole. A society or culture has its own identity, its own consciousness, or in Durkheim's words, collective consciousness. 6.4, Functionalism in Social Anthropology and Radcliffe-Brown and Malinowski. The first approach of social anthropology for the analysis of society was evolutionary, which through present earlier in the writings of Comte and Spencer was almost firmly established after the publications of Charles Darwin's On the Origin of Species in 1859. During the second half of the 19th century, almost every anthropologist was concerned with the two issues. First, how was the institution or cultural practice tried established in the first place? What has been its origin? Second, what are the various stages through which it has passed to reach its contemporary state? Both the questions were important and relevant, but in the absence of authentic data, the early or classical evolutionists extravagantly indulged in speculations and conjectures, imagining the cause or the factors that gave rise to institutions and the stages of their evolution. Most of the evolutionists, barring a few possible exceptions such as Lewis H. Morgan and Edward B. Taylor, has not themselves collected any data on which they based their generalization. They almost completely relied upon the informations that travelers, missionaries and colonial officers and soldiers who were in touch with non-Western societies provided, knowing full well that much of this data might be biased, exaggerated, incomplete and incorrect. Because they themselves did not carry out any fieldwork, they earned the notorious title of armchair anthropologist. Both the founder of the British functional approach, Radcliffe-Brown and Malinowski, were vehemently critical of the 19th century evolutionists. Radcliffe-Brown 1952 said that it was based on the conjectural history, a term was used earlier, and not authentic history. It was pseudo-historical, thus devoid of a scientific value. For Malinowski, 1944, classical evolutionism was a limbo of conjectural reconstructions. With the works of these scholars came a shift from 1. Armchair anthropology to fieldwork based studies. 2. The study of the origin and stages of evolution of society and its institutions. Diachronic studies to the society here and now, synchronistic studies. 3rd, the study of the entire societies and culture, macro approach to the study of a particular society, especially the small scale societies, the micro approach. And 4th, an understanding of the society confined to a theoretical level, to putting the knowledge of society here and now to practical use, to bring about a desired change in the society, rather than remaining just an academic study of the oddities of society, different and bizarre customs and practices. The knowledge we have acquired should be used for improving upon the conditions of people, for improving upon the relationship of local people with the outside world. Incidentally, Malinowski called this concern of anthropology practical anthropology. The scholars who later came to be known as functionalists sought to shift the focus of their study from what society was to what society is, and this study should be carried out not by a speculative method but by living with the people in their natural habitats and learning from them from the field. It was not against the process of evolutions and diffusion that the functionalists leveled their criticism, for they knew that they were important process of change. In fact, both Radcliffe-Brown and Malinowski thought that after they were through most of their important fieldwork based studies, they would take up the study of the process of evolution and diffusion. What they were against was a study of the past through imaginative history rather than one based on facts. In authenticate documents were available about societies, they must readily be used for some insights into change, but the functionalists noted that these documents were not available about primitive and pre-literate societies. Therefore, we would not have any knowledge of the development of social institutions among them. Instead of speculating how they have evolved, we should study what they are, using the scientific method of observation, comparison and arriving at generalization. A structural functional approach of Radcliffe-Brown, abandoning the search for origins and the past of institutions and the ways in which the cultural traits have diffused from one part of the world to the other. Radcliffe-Brown 1952 defines each society as a functionally interrelated system in which general laws of or functions operate. He accepts that Durkheim offered the first systematic formulation of the concept of function, and that this concept is based on an analogy between the social life and organic life. However, with reference to Durkheim's use of the term need for the conditions that must be satisfied for a system to continue, Radcliffe-Brown thinks that this term would be directly used towards a postulation of universal human or societal needs. As a consequence, the theory according to which events and developments are meant to fulfill a purpose and happens because of that will perhaps as known as the theory of teleology. As we said earlier, Radcliffe-Brown suspects that functionalism might become teleological. He thus substitutes for the word need the term necessary conditions of existence. He believes that the question on which the conditions are necessary for survival is an empirical one, and the study of a society will tell us about this. Radcliffe-Brown recognized that diverse of conditions necessary for the survival of different systems. Once we have recognized this, we shall avoid asserting that each item of a culture must have a function and that items in different cultures must have the same function. Radcliffe-Brown dislikes the use of the word functionalism, which Malonsky propagated with enthusiasm. His objection is that isms like functionalism are ideologies, schools of thoughts and philosophies and realm of opinions. Science does not have either of them. What it has are the methods of study, opting for those methods that are regarded as the best for the study. A scientist does not have any passionate relationship with any method. For him, they are all of equal importance and worth, but their operational value lies in carrying out a satisfactory study of a phenomenon according to the canons of scientific research. Moreover, Radcliffe-Brown also looks at the distinctions between organism and society. For instance, an organism dies, but a society continues to survive over time. Although it may be changed and transformed, an organism can be studied even when its parts have stopped working. In other words, the structure of an organism can be studied separately from its function, which is not the case of society. Social structure is observable only when it functions. Structure and the functions are inalienable concept in social anthropology. That is why Radcliffe-Brown called his approach structural functional rather than functional, as many have done. He writes, the concept of a function involves the notion of a structure consisting of a set of relations among unit entities, the continuity of the structure being maintained by a life process made up of the activities of the constituent units. Radcliffe-Brown's structural functional approach comprises the following assumptions. A necessary condition for survival of a society is a minimal integration of its part. The concept of a function refers to this process that maintains the necessary integration of solidarity, and in each society structural features can be shown to contribute to the maintenance of necessary solidarity. Further came the central concept of solidarity, while for Radcliffe-Brown it is the structural continuity of society. For example, in an analysis of the lineage system according to the Radcliffe-Brown, one must first assume that some minimal degree of solidarity must exist for its continuity. Then one must examine the process associated with the lineage system, assessing their consequence for maintaining the social integration. One of the processes the investigator would come across is the role of lineage system in adjudicating conflicts in societies where they are land-owning groups. They define who has the right to land and through which side of the family it would pass. In these societies, lineage is a corporate group. Descending through these steps, one will explain the integration of the society in the economic system. Then one will move to the other system of society, analyzing the level, the contribution a part will make to the structural continuity of the whole. Okay, in between let's see the reflection directions. What are the assumptions on Radcliffe-Brown's structural functional approach? This we have to do. So Radcliffe-Brown is far from being dogmatic in his assertion. For him, the functional unity or integration of a social system is hypothesis. That we look for integration and structural continuity of society does not imply that it does not change. Radcliffe-Brown believes that the state of social health, anomia, and social illness, dysnomia, continue two ends of the continuum, and the actual society seems to lie somewhere in between. May the functionalism of Malonsky. By comparison to Radcliffe-Brown, it is Malinowski who claims the creation of a separate school, the functional school. The aim of the functional analysis for him is to arrive at the explanation of anthropological fact at all levels of development by their function, by the part they play within the integration of culture. He assumed that in every civilization, every custom, material, object, ideas and beliefs fulfills some vital function, has some task to accomplish and represents an indispensable fact within a working whole. Whereas Radcliffe-Brown begin with the society and its necessary condition of existence, that is integration, Malinowski started pointing in the individual who has a set of basic or biological needs that must be satisfied of its own survival. It is because of the importance of Malinowski gives the individual that the term psychological functionalism is reserved for him in comparison to Radcliffe-Brown's approach, which is called sociological functionalism, because in this society is the key concept. Malinowski's approach distinguishes between three levels: the biological and the social structural and the symbolic level. In each of these levels has a set of needs that must be satisfied for the survival of the individual. It is on his survival that the survival of large entities such as groups, community and society is dependent. Malinowski's purpose that these three levels constitute a hierarchy. At the bottom is placed the biological system, followed next by the social structural and finally by the symbolic system. The way in which need at one level are fulfilled with effect the way in which they will be fulfilled at the subsequent levels. The most basic need are the biological, but this does not imply that any kind of reductionism because each level constitutes its distinct properties and needs, and from the interrelationship of different levels that culture emerges as an integrated whole. Culture is the kernel of Malonsky's approach. It is uniquely human, for it is not found to exist among subhumans, comprising all those things, material and non-material, that human beings have made right from the time they separated from their simian ancestors. Culture has been the instrument that satisfies the biological needs of human being. It is a need serving and need fulfilling system. Because of this, the role of culture in satisfying biology needs, that Malinowski's functionalism is also known as biocultural functionalism. One of the differences between Radcliffe-Brown and Malinowski may be noted here. A concept functionalism to Malinowski, the concept of culture is a mere epiphenomena, secondary and incidental. For Radcliffe-Brown, he believes that the study of social structure, which for him is an observable entity, encompasses the study of culture. Therefore, there is no need to have a separate field to study culture. Further, whilst social structure is concerned all about observation, what anthropologists see and hear about the individual people's culture is in the minds of people, not amenable to observation in the same way as social structure. That is, Radcliffe is. So Radcliffe wants to make social anthropology a branch of natural science, which should be possible when there is an empirically investigatable subject matter. Radcliffe and action, 6 point, reflection and action. What are the major differences between the theoretical approaches of Radcliffe-Brown and Malinowski? The basic of Malinowski's approach is a theory of vital sequences which have a biological foundation and are incorporated into all societies. These sequences number 11, each composed of an impulse as an associated psychological act and a satisfaction which result from that act. This is the table shown here. First impulse is the drive to breathe, gasping for air. Intake of oxygen is the act, and satisfaction is elimination of CO2 in tissues of satiation. So hunger, that is act is ingestion of food and quenching, satisfaction. Thirst, absorption of liquid, detumescence. Sex appetite, conjugation, restoration of muscular and nervous energy. Fatigue, rest, satisfaction of fatigue. Relentless activity, awakening with restored energy. Somnolence, sleep, removal of tension, abdominal relaxation. Bladder pressure, micturition, relaxation. Colon pressure, defecation, return to normal state. Fright, escape from danger. Pain, avoidance by effective act. So these are the impulses, act and satisfaction which resulted. Permanent vital sequences incorporated in all culture. For instance, the impulse of somnolence accomplished the act of sleep, resulting in satisfaction by awakening with the restored energy. Malinowski in 1944 told. Malinowski follows this 11-fold paradigm with a set of 7 biological needs and their respective cultural responses. So what is these 7 biological needs? Basic needs: metabolism, cultural response, commissariant, reproduction, kinship, bodily comfort, shelter, safety, protection, movement, activities, growth, training, health, hygiene. So for example, the first need is of food, and the cultural mechanism are centered on the processing of food getting, for which Malinowski uses the term commissariat, which means the convey that transport food. The convey that transport food. Similarly, the second need is to reproduction, the biological continuity of society, and the cultural response to which is kinship, concerned with the regulating sex and marriage. For this, Malinowski goes on to 4-fold sequences which he calls the instrumental imperatives, and associated each one of them with their respective cultural responses. The 4-fold sequences is of economy, social control, education and political organization. From here he shifts to the symbolic system of religion, magic, belief and value, examining its role in culture. 6.5 Functionalism of Talcott, Parsons and Robert K.Merton. In 1975, in an important article, Parsons labels his student Robert Merton and himself arch functionalists. He also explains here why he has abandoned the term structural functionalism, which at one time he used for his approach. For him, a structure refers to any set of relationship among parts of a living system. On empirical grounds, he said, it can be assumed or shown that these relationships are stable over a time period by process which is the correlative concept, and the structure one refers to the changes that occurs in the state of the system or its relevant parts. With respect to the structure, the key concept is of stability, and with respect to the process, it is of change. Thus, by structure, we refer to a pattern of relationships in social system, and process refers to the change occurring in that system. A significant characteristic of structural functionalism has been that it has stressed structure more than process. In the article mentioned above, Parsons states that the concept of function stands at a higher level of theoretical generality. It is far more analytical than the concept of structure or even process, although function encompasses the latter. It is because the concept of function is concerned with the consequences of the existence and the nature of structures that can be empirically described. And it is also concerned with the process that takes place in the system. Parsons thinks that his original formulations under the rubric of structural functionalism tend to analyze the society as it is static, but the new formulation where stress is laid on the concept of function than structure in the name of functionalism takes much more account of change and evolution. The new formulation needs out to be examining the functions of process and their consequences for static structures. For example, one may examine in the American context the function of process of education of women on static structure like family. Parsons' functionalism is best known in terms of the functional imperatives, the essential conditions required for the enduring existence of a system, also known as Agile model, based on the first letter of the 4 functions that Parsons has devised, or the 4-function paradigm. It evolves from Parsons' collaborative work with Robert F. Bales in experiments on leadership in small groups. These 4 functions help us to explain how a state of balance or equilibrium emerges in a system. One of the important problems in sociology for Parsons is that he has called the Hobbesian problem of order. He calls it so after the famous political philosopher Thomas Hobbes, one of the founders of the theory of social contract, who was concerned with the question of how order comes in society. Parsons explores the role of these four functions in giving rise to the equilibrium in a society, in a system. Earlier it was noted that the functionalist model of society as one of the interdependence and self-equilibrium is similar to the biological model of an organism. Parsons traces his interest in equilibrium to W.B. Cannon's idea of homeostatic stabilization of psychological process and to his training in biology at the Amherst College, where he had studied. Also, the impact of Malinowski on him was unmistakable, especially the idea of the primacy of the biological system. In the case of society, Parsons submits that the institutions maintain equilibrium by fulfilling the needs, which must be satisfied if the system has to persist. Institutions also solve the recurring problems in a manner similar to the way in which the units of the organisms compare to the institutions or structures of societies do in their natural environment. The system ensures that these institutions or structures work appropriately on everyday basis, satisfying the needs. For achieving equilibrium, society requires the process of socialization, the internalization of societal values, and the mechanisms of social control so that deviance is checked. All action systems and society is one of them face four major problems or have four major needs, namely adaptation, goal attainment, integration, and pattern maintenance, or as Parsons later renamed it, latent pattern maintenance, tension management, or simply latency. Parsons pictures society or the social system as a large square which he divided into four equal parts. These parts are the four functional problems represented by the acronym AGIL. The underlying idea that all system needs to accomplish these four functions in order to survive. The meaning of these four functional imperatives is as follows. Adaptation. By this is meant the problem of securing sufficient resources from the society's external environment and distributing them throughout the system. Each society needs a certain institutions that perform the function of adaptation to the environment, which is an external function. Adaptation provides the means, the instrumental aspects to achieve goals. Biological organism prefers the function of adaptation in general system of function. In the context of society, economic institutions performs this function. Second, goal attainment. This function is concerned with the end of the system to mobilize its resources to attain the goals, to establish priorities among them. It motivates of the actors and originates their efforts. In the general system of action, personality performs this function, while in the case of society, this task is given to the political institution because power is essential for implementation and decision making. Goal attainment is concerned with ends, the consummatory aspect, since goals are delineated in relation to the external environment. It is like adaptation, an external function. Third, integration. It is regarded as the heart of the four-function paradigm, Wallace and Wolff told in 1980. By integration is meant the need to coordinate, adjust, and regulate relationship among various actors or the units of the system, such as the institutions, so that the system is an ongoing entity. According to the general theory of action, the social system performs this action, whereas in society, legal institutions and courts are entrusted with this task. Integration is concerned with the ends and the internal aspects of the system. Latency. The pattern maintenance and tension management. This function pertains to the issues providing the knowledge and information to the system. In general theory of action, culture, the repository of the knowledge and information, accomplishes this function. Culture does not act because it does not have energy. It lays hidden, supplying actors who are higher in energy with knowledge and the information they require for carrying out action. Because culture exists behind the actions of people, it is called latent. Integration takes care of two things. First, it motivates the actors to play their role in the system and maintains the value patterns, and the second, to provide mechanism for managing internal tension between different parts of the actors. The problem that every society faces is of keeping its value system intact and ensuring that the members conform their rules. It will be possible when social values are properly transmitted and imbibed. The institutions that carry out this function are family, religion, and education. Latency gives means to achieve ends. It is internal to the system. AGIL model. Means and ends. Means are instrumental, like adaptation, latency, pattern maintenance and relieving. The ends are goal attainment and integration, the consummatory. The general level of actions theory, organism and culture. In organism is personality, in culture it's the social system. Agile functions in the social system, economy, polity, feudal system, societal community. With this four functional paradigm in mind, Parsons 1973 jointly carried out with Gerald Palat a study of higher education in America by conducting a survey of members of American colleges and universities. An important conclusion of this study was that American universities and colleges specializes in the rational or scientific approach to knowledge. The central shade within the American system of higher education is of cognitive rationality. This value of its paramount significance to contemporary American society. The American system of higher education therefore transmits and maintains value central to its society, of which it is a part, thus performing the function of pattern maintenance. For the purpose of analysis, Parsons identifies subsystems corresponding to AGIL model in all systems and their subsystems. As we have seen at the general level of actions theory, the biological organism performs the function of adaptation, and the personality system the function of goal attainment. The social system integrates the different units, and the cultural system is concerned with pattern maintenance. Then the social system is broken down into four AGIL functions. We noted earlier that the economy performs the function of adaptation, whereas the polity or the political institution is the function of goal attainment. For the subsystems that carry out the function of integration, Parsons uses the term societal community, which remains one of the Ferdinand Tony's ideas of Gemeinschaft. Community, societal community produces solidarity, unity, cohesiveness and loyalty to norms and values and institutions. The function of pattern maintenance, Parsons says, is the task of what he calls the fiduciary system, which pertain to the nature of a trust or trusteeship. This system produces and legitimizes moral values, beliefs and expensive symbols. Each of the subsystems of the system can be taken up for analysis by treating it as a system and then breaking it down into four parts, looking for its components that respectively perform the functions of adaptation, goal attainment, integration and latency. This way of analyzing society is known as the systemic approach. 6.6 Conclusion. Parsons' AGIL model is an ideal type applicable more to differentiated societies than simple societies. In the later case, institutions may collapse into one, with the result of that the same institutions may perform different functions. The examples of family may be cited here, which carries out economic, political and religious functions in addition to the functions traditionally assigned to it, like socialization of the young. In communist society, the party may decide the aspects of economy, the process of election and distribution, and thus adaptation and goal attainment may appear distinguishable. Parsons' theory is popularly known as grand theory, in all-encompassing unified theory, which is believed to have a large explanatory power. However, Parsons' student Robert Merton is skeptical of such a theory, for it is too general to be of much use. Instead, he expresses his preference for mid-level theories which cover certain delimited aspects of social phenomena such as group, social mobility, role conflict. Partially because of this middle range strategy, Merton's functionalism is quite different from that of Parsons. For instance, Merton abandons the search for any functional prerequisites that will be valid in all social societies. He also rejects the idea of the earlier functionalists and that recurrent social phenomena should be explained in terms of their benefits of societies as a whole. For criticism, Merton identifies the three postulates of earlier functionalities given below. One, postulate of functional unity of society. It is an assumption that there is a unity in society which comes about because of the contribution that part takes to the whole. Postulate of universal functionalism. It is an assumption that all social or cultural forms have positive functions which are of the maintenance and well-being of society. Postulate in the indispensability. It is an assumption that the function that a social and cultural form performs is an indispensable precondition of the survival of the society. Merton notes that none of these postulates are empirically justifiable. For instance, there is no reason to suppose that particular institutions are the only one to fulfill the functions. Empirical research shows that there may be a wide range of what Merton has termed functional alternative that may be able to perform the same function. With a critical look, Merton tries to attempt what he calls a codification functional analysis in sociology, a functional paradigm or perspective which is not a grand theory that takes into consideration of the actual dimensions of social reality of conformity and deviance, understanding and explaining them. Like other functionalists, he views society as a system of interconnected parts where the functioning of the part has implications for the functioning of other parts and the entire system. Like this predecessors, he is interested in the concept of equilibrium and integration and the contribution of customs and institutions to the persistence of societies. His definition of function is also in terms of positive contribution of a part to the whole. Functions are those contributions of the consequences make for the adaptation or adjustment of a given system. For the working of society and institution, it is important that all share a set of common values and norms, which is another distinguishing property of functionalism. While agreeing with the other functionalists on certain points stated above, Merton has a distinct contribution to a set of typologies, namely the distinction between the function and dysfunction and between the manifest and latent functions. Most functionalists think that all the contributions are inherently good or functional or for the society, a proposition Merton finds difficult to accept. He thinks that there are acts that have consequences which lessen the adaptation or adjustment of the system. Such acts have harmful consequences, the technical term for which is dysfunction. It is therefore expected that the sociologists will always ask the following question: for whom are the consequences functional or dysfunctional? The same institutions can be functional in one context and dysfunctional in another. All societal institutions are accepted to have some mix of functions and dysfunctions, whereas the institutions tilt to the pole of function or dysfunction in a continuum will depend on the net balance between the function and dysfunctional consequences. Box 6.2 Manifest and Latent Function. The distinction between the manifest and latent functions has its roots in the writings of the founders in sociology. In his study of religion, for example, Durkheim 1915 makes a distinction between the what people do of which they are aware and what emerges from their collective acts which they had not intended and anticipated. When people assemble for collective totemic rituals, their explicit aim is to honor their totem. But what these rituals produce is a sense of oneness, which is a unitedness, unintended, unrecognized and unanticipated consequences. Following this, one can say that that manifest functions are those consequences people observe or expect, while latent functions are those consequences that are neither recognized nor intended. Merton was able to advance four types of explanations in terms of the two dichotomies, function and dysfunction, manifest and latent function. The earlier functionalists put forth only one explanation, and that too with respect to latent function. Merton's concept scheme gained guided empirical research rather than remaining a theory with several explanatory claims like the grand theory of Parsons. In 6.7 you have further readings. They have many books have been given, that history and theory in anthropology. Then for sociology by Golden Alvin, and the structural then the structure of sociological theory, that is by Jonathan H. Turner. And there is also many references as given in this for this chapter, so you can go one by one in those chapters in those books and the particular portion where from it has taken. Okay, this is the end of the unit 6. Now we will go to unit 7.